I am really excited to be able to talk about dating tonight. It's kind of a, let's just say it'll be a vast array of emotions that anyone can feel in talking about this topic, right? From excitement to irritation to, confusion to whatever. So there's so many different emotions we can feel when we talk about this topic. So for tonight, it'll be kind of cool. And I'm actually moving tomorrow, so my brain has been a little chaotic, but I'm trying to keep it grounded. So hopefully we can do that tonight too. Next week I'll be coming to you from a new place. I'm excited about that. But anyway, so I wanted to talk to you tonight though about the topic of dating in the church, and it was really interesting to me that today in sacrament meeting, and I meant to contact the man that gave this talk and just get his talk and just read it. And I may do that in another webinar because it's just phenomenal. Probably the best sacrament meeting talk I've heard in a very long time. And it was basically, he started off saying, he used to like to work out, like he loves college football, right? And so, he learned though, as an adult, that the $25 he spent for the gym membership didn't help him in losing weight, or the exercise equipment that he bought for whatever, if he didn't use it, it didn't help him. So he was talking about just a lot of different aspects, say of being healthy and whatever. But he said it could be the same way with our spiritual life. We can have the scriptures, but if we don't use them, if we don't read them, if we don't study them, then it does us no good. If we have a temple recommend, but we don't go, it doesn't do us any good. I'm giving you the very watered down version because he did it way better than I did. But I think about that too when it comes to the single adult program. Those were the thoughts going through my mind was, we're provided a lot of things. We're provided a lot of different events to meet people or not necessarily to meet people, but to go and be social with people, or to go and interact with other people, to go and do something even as a group, whether it be going to the temple together, to just do that together, go to dinner together, go to a dance, go on a hike, go to whatever, right? Like there's just so many different opportunities that we have or that we can create, whether it be a game night or home evening group or come follow me study group or whatever. And I've been involved and I've been added to so many different Facebook groups, which is, pro and a con. I love you guys, but I think I'm a member of over 100 single adult Facebook groups, and I pretty much turned off notifications to all of them because, especially if they're chat groups, I don't have time. Love you people. If you want to talk to me, send me a message. But anyway, it's just, it's just a lot going on, and there's a lot that's kind of coming at us that we feel like we've got to juggle and keep up. But in some of these Facebook groups, I actually went through a couple of them today with someone, and there's some feedback noise coming from somebody. If you're using two different devices, you're going to need to log out of one, or else you're going to get feedback. Okay, so anyway, we were going through some of these and seeing some of the comments and seeing some of the different conversations, which it can be cool, right? Like we can learn a lot from other people, and we learn a lot from each other, which is one of the fabulous things about the single adult program. But a lot of people do focus on, rightfully so, right? We're in a family-oriented church of dating and of meeting people and of getting married. And I just feel like this topic is one that is so necessary for us to address and to come together to talk to each other about. I'm going to set up a few guidelines, especially if you haven't been with me before. We're not going to do any bashing. There's no bashing of leaders. There's no bashing of exes. There's no bashing of anyone. I'm totally okay with you sharing your feelings, whether it be positive, negative, whatever. Totally okay with that. We just don't want to get into bashing all men do this or all women do that or whatever. I don't want to do anything like that. And I just want to be able to have a conversation with everybody. I want to leave this open for anyone to share your thoughts tonight with anything that we talk about, especially on this topic. And then I'm going to plan to guide you through. I don't have my notepad next to me. I don't even know where it's packed right now to keep up. So if I get lost or whatever, somebody reel me back in. But with this topic, I have just found there's a few things I think that we need to address first before we get into actually talking about dating, and that is our mindset. I have read so many Facebook posts on these chat groups and these other Facebook groups about relationships and meeting people. And a lot of it comes across as complaining about not meeting somebody and not finding somebody or whatever. And there's a lot of them, right? I even read one today and wanted to save it to read part of it to you guys. It was from a man. And he was saying, I know I'm not a great catch. And I'm like, oh, thank you. Oh, heard me say I didn't have my notepad next to me. Okay, now I've got a notepad next to me. Thank you. So anyway, he said, I know I'm not a great catch. And I'm like, well, then what makes you think that any one of us is going to go, hoo-hoo, let me go out with him, right? If you're going to put that out there and say, well, if you feel that way, okay. And not that any of us need to come across arrogant or whatever, but we do need to have an air of confidence that we like who we are and that we can be a good fit for somebody, if that makes sense. What I have found is our mindset and what we project, what we say, what we communicate, whether it be in writing, verbally, or through body language, will attract or detract different people, retract, whatever that word is, as in repel other people. So we want to repel people that maybe aren't ready for a healthy relationship. Let's just put it that way. But for the most part, we're all good people. There was another comment made, I think it was by a woman, and she said something like, for all of you good men out there, what would you, and she'd ask them a question. And I'm like, so men are supposed to respond like, hey, I'm one of those good men. Are there really going to be men out there that say, hey, I'm not one of those good men, so I'm not going to respond to that? You know what I mean? So I just thought that was a little different to me. The way it came across to me, in my perspective, it just came across a little different to me. Again, though, putting out the mindset and the perspectives and the whatever. So I'm going to share with you, I'm vulnerable at times. I'm going to share with you some mindsets that I had that prevented me from dating for about 10 years while I've been single. I've been single now 12, and I've dated more in the last year than I have my entire time of being single. And I realized it was me that was preventing me from having dates, not the men, okay? It was my own mindset. It was things I was saying to myself, not necessarily even out loud. Things that I would say out loud that still didn't hurt. And some of you have been friends with me for a while, so you've heard me say these things before. I used to say things like, oh, nobody's going to want to go out with me because I'm like the girl next door. I'm the woman guys are going to come to for information about another woman. Friends that are on here with me are listening to this. You've heard me say that before, years ago. And I stopped saying that because I'm like, why would I think that? Why would I think no man would want to go out with me because, I'm not Barbie, for lack of a better word. Because I'm not that tall, blonde, 30-something-year-old that whatever. But then I started realizing, and I actually took, and we've talked about this before, I took the Strengths Finder test. I think it was about 2 years ago now. And it was so incredibly validating to me to realize what my strengths were that I actually thought were my weaknesses and celebrating those as my strengths instead of thinking I'm too this or I'm too whatever. And I think a lot of us tend to think that by putting ourselves down, we're being modest. And we're not. By putting ourselves down, we're being derogatory toward ourselves. It's not a thing of modesty, it's more of a thing of insecurity. And one of the best things I've been able to project and be able to feel within myself was just confidence in who I am. I know who I am. I like who I am. I'm not arrogant about it. I'm a down to earth kind of woman. Most, people that know me know it's, just I love the gospel. I love the Lord. I put him first, or at least that's my goal to do that in everything that I do. But my mindset so had to change. Other things that I would say to myself was, who is going to want me in all this craziness that I've been through? Who in their right mind? I said that out loud to many friends. I said it out loud to my kids, and I said it out loud to myself. Who in their right mind would want me? Because of all of the craziness of my life and all the stuff that I've been through. Who's going to say, ooh, pick me, when they have thousands of other women they can choose from? It'd be easier, right? Easier. But I did learn that the Lord's way is not always the easy way, right? And my life now is fine. It's always some craziness going on, but not as bad as it was years ago. So anyway, I'm just giving you a couple of examples of things that I did to prevent myself from dating. Because there was no man in their right mind that was going to be attracted to me when I was saying that to myself. Because you attract what you feel. You attract what you feel like you deserve. So it's not like you attract what you deserve. You attract what you feel like you deserve. Hope that makes sense. So when I was saying, nobody's going to want to go out with me because I'm just the girl next door. Nobody did. And or the guys that did weren't men that I would consider in my realm of possibilities, for different reasons. And I thought I was doing everything I needed to do, right? I was reading my scriptures and saying my prayers. I was going to the temple. I was going to church every week. My kids were all doing all the stuff they were supposed to be doing and whatever. And I just didn't understand. Why couldn't I get married? So I want to talk about that real quick. Not really real quick. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about our own mindset and what are you doing to prevent yourself from dating. If you want to share, I'm going to open up the floor. And you don't necessarily have to share what you're doing to prevent yourself from dating. You don't have to be that vulnerable. But I want you to think about that concept and what are you attracting, I've also heard it said that when you put yourself down, you're going to attract somebody that's going to put you down. We don't want that. Who wants that, right? So stop putting yourself down. You're a wonderful person as you are, right where you are in this life. Now, we're all going through some stuff, and we're all at different stages of it, and that's totally fine. But when you put yourself down, you're going to attract somebody who's going to put yourself down, put you down. And, I can keep going on with different examples. That's just my favorite one to use because most of us, I can't think of any one of us would want somebody that would be putting us down, right? So don't do that to you. All right, opening up the floor. Let's talk mindset for a minute or two. You just unmute yourself when you want to share, and then let's chat.
Can I seek clarification on what you're actually asking? Because you asked a couple of questions there.
Yeah, no. Like I told you, I was all over the place, right? Thanks for reeling me back in, Jennifer. So what I want to do is open up the floor for either talking about just mindset in general if you want to, or if you want to talk about what you feel like is preventing you from dating. Okay. And then we're going to get into that article. Anyone?
Something that keeps,
Yeah.
sorry.
Go right
Something
ahead.
that keeps me from dating is that there aren't really any compatible people.
Oh, no.
Right?
No.
Not
We're
a good
not
one.
outside ourselves. I'm just talking about right now within yourself.
Within myself.
Within yourself.
Okay. Never mind.
Your own way of thinking, your own way of whatever. Because we really want to think about, there's a lot of people that go, well, I need to find the right person, right? But first, what I want you to focus on is being the right person. We're only going to spend a few minutes talking about this before we get into the article. And then we're going to go in a whole different direction. But I wanted to address this first because I see it all over. Where people, I thought the same thing, Kelly, for the longest time. There's just nobody around here. I live in the South, you know? And then I find out we have 10,000 single adults in the Atlanta area alone. Most stakes average 1,000 single adults. Most wards average anywhere from 80 to 150 single adults. These are single adults, not YSA people. Okay? Now, we do have about 80% that are less active. We do have that. I'm going to give you that. But that still leaves quite a few left in your ward that are actively going to church. Whether they're actively participating in the single adult program might be different. But that is the average in the South. Okay? So there are people, but different people may be at different stages of being ready for a relationship. Or they may be thinking, there's nobody going to be there tonight, so I'm not even going to bother going to a single adult event, right? Or they may think, I've done this for 2 years. I've done this long enough. If I can't find anybody now, I'm just going to give up. Then that's when we go back to trusting in the Lord's timing. Or realizing you got 2 people to get ready. There's 2 people the Lord's working on, you and the other person that you're going to meet, right? And I'm not saying anything about soulmates. I'm just saying that for you to meet, there's got to be 2 people that are both ready for a relationship.
Paula, I think my biggest hang up is I am not always willing to be vulnerable to go past just a first few dates or whatever to have that meaningful relationship. So I think for me, it's lack of vulnerability to go past a certain point.
I love that you bring that up, Jennifer, because I've had the same thing. So, I love it. We're going to talk about that in a little bit too. As Fred's over there smiling because he knows.
That doesn't mean I'm not willing to do it. I just really struggle, right? I just struggle to allow myself to be vulnerable because it seems like every time I've ever allowed myself to be that vulnerable, it has somehow backfired.
Yep. Totally got that. Hey, Brian, do you want to share a thought?
Yeah, I'll share a little bit. I think there's a combination of things, and it's kind of complicated, but I think I don't know if I'm probably not alone in this, but time and distance. And there is a little bit of a selection part of it too, of how many people there are, because that means that we have to branch out to a larger distance. And then there's a time involvement, especially for me, because I have 3 kids, at least half the time. So that means that the time investment is more kind of precious, and that creates that combined with the distance and the selection kind of combination makes it a little bit difficult to find someone, or at least for me to get out of that mindset that that distance is a hurdle.
So time, kids, and distance, right? Okay. So again, that can be a mindset thing where you feel like I don't have the time, or I've got all these kids things to do, and that's not just mindset, that's also responsibility. And then you've got the whole distance things. Do I really want to do this? If I talk myself into this enough, do I really want to put in those miles, right? So yeah. So and being in the South, we've got, it depends on where you live as to what programs you've got available and how many people are willing to come and that kind of thing. So I totally get that. Okay. Awesome. Anybody else want to share about anything before we move on to the article?
I'm
For-
here.
Yeah, I'll say one other thing. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You can go ahead.
Debbie, did you want to share something?
No, I just signed on.
Oh, yay. Glad you're here. Okay. All right, Brian, what did you have to share?
No, what you were talking about before with the confidence thing is very much what the non-Mormon world calls like the game or playing the game or having their mojo or whatever, just having confidence that's what it's called outside of the LDS single adult, I guess, or single population is just having that mindset because you're going to attract what you think, what you project.
Right. Definitely. Yep. I love the mojo. I use the mojo a lot. Get your mojo on. All right, Fred, did you have a comment to make? I see that you're unmuted.
Yeah, would you you kind of give us a 1-minute review of what you said about the way we present ourselves? Example, I'm a dud. Why would anybody want me? Those kind of things.
Yeah, so there's a lot of ways that we talk, and sometimes we think it's going to come across more humble, right? Like it's more modest if I just put myself down and I just say, I'm not that good, or I'm not a great catch, or I've just got all this craziness going on, like you just heard me say that tonight, right? So there's a lot of different things that we can do. Like I read a lot, and I did read a couple of posts today from men who just said, I'm not a great catch. So anybody that's going to want me is going to have to put up with blah, 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 blah. I mean, it can come across negative, right? And so then to him, I want to say, dude, we're all great in different ways, right? And so, but how we present ourselves, whether it be verbally or online or whatever, is going to determine who or what you attract, whether it be something or nothing or something unhealthy. So, and I get the vulnerable thing. We are going to go to the vulnerable part in just a little bit, because I realized in studying this article, Fred, I think it was Fred that sent me this article a few months ago, and I had planned to use this at some point this year, and realizing I was doing some of this stuff. I'd been doing it. I was still doing some of it. I'm like, man, and thinking I'd gotten to a point or healthier point, and then I was still dealing with some of this. So, and then also the example that I use, because it's one of my favorite examples to use, is when we put ourselves down, we're going to attract somebody to put us down. If that's something you do habitually, then you will attract somebody who's going to put you down. If you're going to, I don't know, be all hung up about your weight and whatever, you're going to attract somebody that's going to give you a big hang up about your weight. You just need to be okay with who you are, where you're at right now, and let it be good. Let it be great, because you are. Okay, Brian?
I was just going to put it in dude terms for Fred.
Okay, good.
Basically what it means, and a lot of what they call some of the attitude in like the game is, you just have to, if you want someone to love you, you need to love yourself first. You
Yes.
need to have that confidence. And if you don't love yourself, then the people that are going to be attracted to you are going to be the people that want to dominate you, people that want to abuse you or use you in some way, and not people that love you. And people that want somebody who's inferior to them, because that is what you're projecting. And so that is the quality that they found in you that they like. So you'll end up with people that don't want to treat you well because you're not treating yourself well. And if you want someone who holds you high on a pedestal and treats you well, then you need to believe that first. and then you'll project that, and they'll come looking for you. So it's all about having this mindset of psyching yourself out and knowing that you are worth it. You are worth it for somebody out there, and that you not only belong, but that you're a great catch for somebody. And having that in your head when you go, other people will see that just because of the confidence in your smile and in the way you walk and the way you hold yourself and the way you treat yourself. They can see that, and it will attract them.
Amen. Amen, amen, amen. And also for the women, I mean, that's not just for the man, but that's also the same thing for a woman. There are women that have told me, Paul, I just seem to attract men or get to relationships where it's one-sided and he doesn't really love me and doesn't really want to commit to me and whatever. And I said, well, do you feel like you're worth loving? Do you love yourself? And through tears, I've had women tell me, no, I don't really, I don't feel like I'm worth that. I want a man to do that for me. And I'm like, that's not the way it works though. The way that it works is for you to, number one, love yourself and realize your value and your worth. And again, not in an arrogant way. There's a very humble way to do this. Because arrogance is definitely insecurity. It reeks of insecurity. So it is the same. It's the same thing, men and women. If you love yourself, if you love where you're at in your life, who you are and what you become and whatever, it will project in your words, in your actions, in everything. People will be drawn to you because of that light, if you will, that you're going to project. And it's almost like projecting the love of Christ. Because when we do feel good about who we are, then, oh my goodness, that is so going to show to everybody. I don't think anybody questions whether or not I'm okay with who I am. But I can't tell you, well, I probably could, but I'm not going to go into it, the hours, the years it took me to become the woman I am today. And not only that, the challenges, the tears, the experiences I had to go through to get to where I am now. Would I want to repeat many of them? Probably not. But I definitely like who I am, but I had to accept who I am instead of feeling like I had to compare myself, to my beautiful friends that I feel like are just gorgeous women and great catches, and then realizing I am too. Remember, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I'm no Barbie. I know that, and I'm okay with that. I like who I am, as a 51-year-old woman that, is active in the church and 5 kids and whatever else. It's good. I'm good. I'm good with the place I'm at. But it didn't come easy. And I don't think it comes easy for many of us. But being vulnerable in a situation like this is easier for me. Being vulnerable one-on-one, ooh, honey, we're going to have to chat about that one. Okay? So it is different. So anybody else want to add any thoughts to that before we move on? You do, just mute yourself. Unmute yourself. You don't have to raise your hand. You can just unmute and then just go ahead and start talking. All right. So I want you to imagine yourself on a playground. You spot a giant old school teeter-totter. It's bright yellow and it rises well above your head on the upside. You look around the playground, you find someone who looks well suited to be your partner, and together you climb onto your opposing seats. Rising and falling, you bounce up and down. You're enjoying the ride. Feeling confident that you and your partner have found a good rhythm, you're going to tuck your feet up off the ground, trusting that the balance and rhythm will continue. And then just as you begin to relax in your new position, your partner across from you and on their way back to the ground turns their legs to the side and casually rolls off their seat as they touch the ground. High in the air on the other side, it hits you. You're about to come crashing down. Now, That's how this article starts out. It says, for Dr. Scott Stanley, a research professor of marital and family studies from the University of Denver, that's the metaphor of choice when describing what he calls asymmetrically committed relationships. And he said, looking back about 40 years ago or so, there were pretty clear steps or stages that signaled where a couple was in their relationship with one another. He says, in my day, you asked a girl out, you went out a few times on dates. The next thing was one of you would say, hey, do you want to go steady? One would say, sure. And then that's the whole discussion. But there have been dramatic changes since then in the last few decades in terms of the way the relationships, marriages, and families do or don't form. And he said that, you know, a lot of times now people are now, he's now created, he's done all this different research and has different theories about the effects of ambiguity among those searching for relationships, because there's a lot of different dialogue now that we have in relationships. And I mean, think about it. For most of us that are over 40, when we were dating in our late teens or 20s, it was very different. And for the most part, it's almost like we're trying to recreate that same experience or similar, where we feel attracted to someone, we go out with them, we go steady, we do whatever, right? But it's not the same at our age. It's just not. And even if you're older than 30 and never been married, it's still different than it was when you were in the late teens and early 20s. I don't know if you guys realize, but the reasoning and logic part of our brain does not actually completely develop or finish developing until about our mid-20s, maybe late 20s. Most of us, by that time, had been married with children. We did not use our reasoning and logic skills in our brain to try to choose a spouse. It wasn't totally formed. We weren't thinking about the long haul and 50 years from now and grandkids and whatever. We just thought love will get us through everything, and, you know, and we'll grow old together, right? We'll live happily ever after. That's what a lot of people thought, especially if you grew up here in the South and you were told, as I was, you know, if you're a good girl and you do everything you're supposed to do, you're going to get married in the temple and everything will work out and you'll live happily ever after. You're going to be blessed. And that's what I was told, and that's what I believed, and I hung on to that for dear life. And then it crashed and burned after my first temple marriage fell apart. And then I was like, wait a minute, everything I prepared for my life is different. It's gone. What do I do now? I've got these 2 kids, I've got whatever, you know, what do I do? And so then I went out to recreate that again, right? I was still in my 20s. I was able to do that again. And it wasn't a great experience. Let's just say that. But when we do that, and now in our 30s, in our 40s, in our 50s, 60s, however old you are, it is different because our brains are different. Our experiences are different. We are wired differently now. I just wanted to go off on that tangent just for a minute so that you understand that part of it. Now, in today's dating culture, and if you're referring to the article, I'm just reading through some of this right now, the culture has become one of fear, anxiety, and unrealistic expectations. And there are unrealistic expectations on both sides, not just men, not just women, but both sides. What I find interesting, because I get to have a lot of conversations with women, is women, a lot of women, not all women, kind of expect men to still do most of the work in guiding the relationship, right? Well, why isn't a man going to ask me out? I want the man to ask me out. Now, I'm this way, so I'm letting you know. This is still me, okay? There's nothing wrong with this. This is exactly how I feel. I am not going to be the first woman. I'm not going to be a woman to ask a man out on the first date. I just won't do it. And that's okay. And if you are, that's okay. If you do, there's nothing wrong with either way. We have different expectations. I don't think that's necessarily unrealistic because I do other things to preface my interest with that man that is healthy and that is realistic and is very, let's just say it's not confusing to them. And I do it in a good way, so I'm not too forward or whatever. We can talk about that in a minute too, if you want to. But the fear instead of the faith, or the anxiety and the unrealistic expectations are the ones that are really hurting the dating culture right now. How many of you are afraid to fail again if you've been through a divorce? Anyone? I know I wasn't willing to admit it, but I know that within my first, I don't know, 5 to 8 years of being single, I was really afraid. I remember even saying out loud, I cannot imagine sleeping in my house with my children, also asleep with a man in my house. I can't imagine. We had been through some stuff that was, let's just say, not very good. And the thought of me relaxing enough to trust another man sleeping in my house was huge. And I got to work through that through therapy, which was very helpful. Now it's not an issue. But in the beginning it was like one that I had to come to terms with and just go, hey, that was something. I had some fear going on there, right? And then you hear of all these horror stories and all these bad marriages, and who wants to be in a bad marriage, right? Do any of us want to go, ooh, pick me, let me go sign up for to be married and miserable? Nobody really wants to do that. All right. So with these sky-high expectations, people are often simply delay making committed relationship choices or opt to only half-heartedly commit to the relationships they do find. And as a result, the number of people choosing the path of marriage has plummeted in recent years. And I see that even among single adults. There's a lot of people, even as young as, I don't know, 50s, 60s, whatever, who just said, I'm not going to remarry. I'm just not even going to try to get out there and do that again. Because it's a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of commitment. You got to take time away, a lot of sacrifice, right? Time away from family or your job or whatever. And then, maybe you got to travel really far, like Brian was bringing up. So then there are people that also, quite honestly, have a lack of skill of how to talk to people. Because again, it's different now than it was 20, 30 years ago, however long it's been since you got married. So there is a lack of skill in communicating. And that has really touched in or affected the whole ambiguous type relationships where it's really not clearly defined. And people often fail to communicate what they want or don't want from their relationships. I'm going to give you an example. One of the things that I've told men that I've gone out with, and I usually let them know in a pretty nice way. It's not like I'm going to give them a sheet of rules to date me. But I've let them know that for me, an exclusive relationship means you're holding my hand and you're kissing me. So if any man gets to a point with that with me, then we're exclusively dating. I'm not going to do that with just anybody. That's you in my personal space, and I'm allowing myself to be vulnerable with you. So and I let them know that before that happens, not after. So then I know when they've gotten to that point, then I know what they've chosen, right? Because I made that clear that was an expectation. And I think that that's realistic. We don't need to be doing that with just anybody come up in. All right. So just to let you know, in dating, that's an expectation that I have. But expectations of who you date, there are different things that we have that I think are realistic, and then there's expectations I don't think that are. But again, my opinion, your perspective might be different. So we're going to talk about 3 main types of people that play in the relationship fields today. And he said that there are the seekers, those who are actively looking to find a partner. Okay. We have the delayers, those who are determined not to get tied down to any one person or relationship. And then we have the wanderers, those who are just in and out of the dating scene without giving much thought to who or what they want. Do you know which one you are?
But there needs to be a 4th category.
What's that?
Ones that haven't been in the dating scene at all. There ain't no dating scene.
Right.
The pond is dry.
There you go. Well, you could still be a seeker, even if you're not finding anything. You could still be a seeker, right? Or those that are out there, they're like, "Where are you?" kind of thing. They could be the delayers and putting that off. So yeah, and I mean, I get it. There's a lot of different ways of looking at this. So, would any of you consider yourself a delayer or a wanderer?
If I might,
Yeah.
I would say that I have been all 3 at different points in my life.
Right.
And it would come and go. You know, when you go into a relationship and things don't work, yeah, that's pretty disheartening. And maybe you go from seeker to more of a delayer, and it morphs one into the next. And that's kind of been my experience.
Okay. I wouldn't have thought about it being that way, but yeah, that could be. Well, I guess I don't know. Maybe he's talking about the ultimate goal, or I don't know. Maybe it is just for the time. That is cool. That's a great way of looking at it. Though. Thanks, Pat. All right. Anyone else want to comment on that?
I'm a wanderer, but not with unclear goals, because I think I have clear goals. But sometimes I think that it's what I want. And it has a lot to do with what you were saying, whether I'm worthy. Okay, well, I have this goal for this person, but can I live up to the person that I need to be? Well, maybe I need to back off for a little while and get myself there. And then I'll go back and look. You know, I don't know. Does that make sense?
Totally. But Kelly, what's wrong with the person you are now?
I know. I mean, and it's fine. But I'm just saying that's been my thoughts in the past. That's why I've backed off and come back and backed off and come back.
Okay. All right. Good.
I agree with that. I
What?
think that a lot of times we go into that wandering mode because we know we've got stuff we need to work on. It's not a healthy time to be getting into a relationship. And I think sometimes too, you know, we wander because we don't know what we're seeking, and then all of a sudden when we find it, some people can turn into a seeker and then go back to wandering if things didn't go well in that search, and they can kind of go back and forth. I think some of that readiness is part of the reason of being a wanderer.
Wonder. Makes me think of a song.
I totally agree with Kelly. I mean, and I get it, because you know, we want to be the person that we want to find, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we want to live up to, you know, it's like if I want a particular kind of person, then I need to be what they're looking for too, which would be something similar to them. So like for me right now, you know, I'm not what I'm looking for. So that's why I just kind of hang back in the scene, and I'm just the wanderer or whatever. But, you know, I've got a lot to work on myself before I'm, you know, really want to throw myself out there, because I know what my potential is, but there's no way some people could really see it. What it brings me to is, you know, Johnny Lingo and the 10 Cow Wife.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's
Yeah.
like, I think if I had a Johnny Lingo, then maybe I would be the 10 Cow Wife. But realistically, it's real hard to find that person, male or female, because a lot of females are the same way. There's a lot of, that could be a 10-cow husband, we just don't put, like I've said before and in a post on that one page, sometimes we don't put our spiritual goggles on to see past, kind of like that movie Shallow Hal. We don't see past the physical or sometimes the circumstances to see that person's potential. And so for me, knowing that that's reality, I just kind of hang back right now until I can become the person that, I'm looking for.
Debbie, I really appreciate you sharing that with us. That's awesome. I appreciate you being vulnerable like that and sharing that about you. I love what you said though about seeing somebody's potential. Now, there's a couple of different ways of looking at that. I love the viewpoint of just seeing someone's potential. We all have potential to be better, right? And with someone else, we can, be better together, kind of thing. But I do also love your mindset of becoming who you want to be, so that you can find the person that you're looking for, and you match that up, right? Because you also know the potential of both through those spiritual goggles or whatever. It's a great analogy. There is one way of thinking too, though, that I want to make sure that none of us, and I've had a tendency to do this in the past, is to want to go in to change somebody. You go, well, there's a lot of women that I've heard talk about training a man. Well, I'll just take anybody and then I can train them to be the man I want them to be. And that is so not a good mindset to be in. For
Oh,
men,
yeah.
right?
My parents have been married for 66 years.
Oh, wow.
66 and a half years. They're almost 88 years old. They've been married since 1953. And my mom tells everyone, you will never change the other person.
Right.
So, I mean, no, never should anybody ever go into a relationship thinking, oh, well, that irritates me and I'm going to I'll fix that one day.
Right.
If it irritates you now, then that's not the person for you. Go find the person that irritates you the least.
Yeah.
I mean, because everybody's going to irritate you in some degree, but what can you live with,
Right.
especially at our age.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because we're so set in our ways and certain things, you're just going to have to love it or not have it.
True. And we'll all continue to evolve into whatever we become, when we're 88, right? But that's so fabulous too, though. I'm loving that your mom shares that with you, because not everybody does.
Paula, I think it goes back to something I said back early on when we first started talking about this is I know that I'm a person that has very high expectations. And so I know I have to find somebody that has high expectations on themselves. And we don't have to be where we ultimately want to end up, but we do have to be those people that are goal oriented and both are willing to work hard to get to where we ultimately want to go. And that's where communication comes in and being vulnerable about what we actually want and being honest about that while we're vulnerable, being honest about ultimately what we want. So that's hard for me because if I'm going to share my deep darks, I need to know that this is going somewhere.
Definitely. Oh, I love that, Jennifer. Love that. That is fabulous. That is so. Chris, thank you. I appreciate it.
Paula.
Yes. Billy.
Something that's frightening to me is, and I don't know who else, I'm sure there are more people in this boat. I met my ex-husband, in college, and so we grew up together, we became the adults that we are together. We were together for 32 years. So now I'm going, I'm kind of where I am, and somebody my age is also where they are. And how's that gonna, pan out. I don't know. It's back to the whole idea of marry somebody who is in your same faith, your same culture, which we're there, but somebody who's enough like you that you're gonna be okay living with them, I guess.
Exactly.
So it's
So
scary.
we're at a point where we're gonna combine our life and their life together and make it work and try to blend it, right? Because we don't want to lose who we are, and they don't want to lose who they are in that relationship. So that's why I started off with the mindset thing. Because when you are a certain mindset and you have a certain belief system there, then you will be able to go in confidently to a relationship that will have a friendship that you'll feel secure in, that you'll feel whatever in, as long as you're both confidently there and still be able to have your life, however that will turn out to be. Now, there's I don't know, no perfect anything, right? Like none of us are perfect, but we can definitely create a really good, strong, solid relationship as long as the communication is clear and the expectations are clear. I will tell you, I knew of a man a few years ago that was on a trek to go wherever, travel whatever distance to find the woman he was going to marry. And one of the women that he went out with had the expectation of marrying a billionaire. And let's just say he didn't quite make that much money. And because of that, they were no longer dating. But that was her expectation. Would you consider that a realistic or unrealistic expectation? Matter of opinion. For me, that was unrealistic. I just thought, that's not something that, and I have heard other women say that they want a man that makes a certain income level, that whatever, and that's totally fine. If that's their thing, I'm not gonna discount that. We just need to know and talk about different expectations as well. So let's talk for a minute about those of us that might be actively seeking a committed relationship. Now, fewer people overall are getting married these days, right? And those that are getting married are doing so at later ages, and some are taking more time, some are rushing into it. There's a lot of times there's at least an agreement with some of them that are getting into some form of a committed relationship and doing what they call a DTR. If you're familiar with that or not, it's called, but it stands for define the relationship. And you want to do that at some point. And a lot of times people do that instead of the whole, hey, do you want to go steady kind of thing. And it is understandable that people are afraid. And it is sometimes hard to say if we're a thing or not if we don't have that communication there. And some people are afraid to bring it up for fear that, oh no, if I feel like I'm rushing them or whatever, then they'll stop wanting to go out with me or whatever. And something that I learned a long time ago is you're going to be hard pressed to mess up the right relationship, because the right relationship is going to take you, mistakes and all. And those that don't are going to, leave at whatever, stage of the game they want to. So there are people though that may feel like, I'm already starting to look back on relationships and think, what was I doing there? Most of the reasons are generally ambiguous. So whether they're afraid of rejection or they don't want to open themselves up emotionally and be vulnerable, or a lot of times people just want to avoid pain. They want to avoid, especially emotional pain, right? So before we get into the steps, into the 7 steps, do you guys have any other comments you want to make on anything we've talked about so far? So one of the things that they recommend first is to take it slow. And I want to talk about this because slow can mean a lot of different things. I know of a woman that got married yesterday that as of March 23rd of this year was not dating anybody. And now she's married. To me, that was a little fast. To her, it felt comfortable and it felt right. She would have made that choice, I'm sure. But there are different stages of relationships that, we've talked about before, the relationship attachment model or whatever else, and there's no time frame on that. But it is one that we do want to try to take things slow here a little bit. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
I think it's a little bit of a personal decision, but I think I think I may even know who you're talking about too. But and I don't really judge other people for the way they're doing things, because if they're happy, then great, and if they're not happy in the future because of it, then I kind of feel bad for them if they had to go through it. But um, that the person that I have in mind that I think it could be seems very happy, um, and so I'm happy for them. But I think for me, I'm certainly not ready for that, because you said something a little bit ago about if the relationship is right, it would be hard pressed to mess it up. I don't know that I have the confidence in that. I'm not as confident on that statement. But if that statement is true and the relationship is just right, then maybe fast isn't the worst thing. But I think the most important thing, and if we get to the topic later on, I'll bring it up again. But I think the most important thing is really just to have a good connection with the Holy Ghost, to know that we're making the right decisions when we make them, and that we're taking the right steps when we take them. And that, and where I'm going to kind of go into that, if it comes up later on, is dating in the church and outside of the church and that sort of thing. And I think it's just important that we follow the Spirit. I'm certainly personally not in any hurry to make any real big decisions, but that's because of the experiences that I've been through.
Right. Okay. Well, here in taking it slow, he's just suggesting not to go too fast. Keep your eyes open and be gathering information, but just take it slow. And slow is whatever speed you define it to be.
Right. Paula, actually wanted to say something about that. I think part of why it's so healthy to take it slow is because sometimes in the beginning we are able to miss some of those really important things because we're just so happy that we're happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it can be a trap. I'm not saying that that's true for everyone, but it can easily be a trap, and we end up missing some red flags that we would otherwise see or find if we just slowed our rolls just a little bit. I mean, so yeah, I've got some things very similar to what Brian was saying that I want to bring up later for my 8th point or whatever, but if we get there tonight, great, and if not, we'll do it next time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's important for us to slow down enough to make sure we see all of who they are, and they have an opportunity to see all of who we are, so that there's no surprises later down the road.
Yeah, right. Great. Number 2 does say to look for valid signals. And it varies, but there will be reliable signals if you stop and think about it. Number 3 is saying pay attention to red flags. A person's little behaviors can reveal a lot about them. If, like he said, pay attention. He said, and when you get a ton of information, believe it. There are red flags I didn't even know were red flags. Like, for instance, if someone is very, like someone that you newly meet,
and they're wanting to get into, say, the physical, the intimacy really fast. They're calling you and texting you every day and multiple times a day, and they're checking up on you and whatever. It's not a sign of love. It's a sign of control. And I didn't know that early on when I was dating. And that's something that I do share with a lot of people, because at first it comes across, they're very charming, and they're very, they can make somebody feel really good really fast. And that's something that is a red flag. Not saying it, everybody is, but for the most part, that is. And it says, look for someone who shares your beliefs and values. So like, there have been a lot of people, not a lot of people, but several people bring up through these webinars, dating members in the church or out, dating members of the church or out, or dating outside the church. And that always goes back to, you need to date people who have your same beliefs and values. If you don't, there will be an issue later on. There usually is. One or both of you will have to give up something you believe in and that's near and dear to you, or they'll have to join the church if you date a non-member and marry a non-member, to be able to have you be able to live where you are. And not to say that you can't have a healthy relationship married to a non-member. There are people that do, but there's a lot of things you miss out on in being married to a non-member. Okay, and then number 5 says avoid high-cost slides. They notice the importance of making choices about relationships move forward rather than simply sliding into new situations that will increase relationship constraints. And then he suggested doing premarital training. It's something everyone can benefit from, and it's better to do it early. He said, be realistic about potential mates. Don't look for perfection, because it's highly unlikely that perfection is what you can offer them. Look rather for someone who can be a good partner and a match. All right, I'm now going to open it up for anybody that wants to add to that, or to, make any other comments, or open up discussion for whatever else.
One thing, like that, the one point was about go slow.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like Brian was saying, it's like, well, maybe not. I mean, because I've seen a few people that got married pretty quick after they started dating, and I've seen them crash and burn, and then I've seen people that got married pretty quick and they seem to be doing okay. But my point that I'm always harping over and over and over and over, once you're in the relationship, that's one thing. But my thing is, take it slow. After a long-term relationship, whether it be divorced or widowed, that's when you got to take it at a snail's pace, because
Amen.
you've got to heal. You've got to know who, and you've heard me, and even recently on the post and the group, you just got to heal. You got to know what you're looking for. Mm-hmm. And like I said in that post, desperate people, people that feel like they can't be alone, that they're just desperate to not be alone, they're going to make really bad decisions. They're going to be so blinded by the glow of being in a relationship. They're so blinded by that they're not going to see the flags. And so they that's the most critical piece, is to be happy alone, happy with yourself. And because it's the old adage, if you don't love yourself, you can't love anybody else. Mm-hmm. And but desperate people really make bad decisions. And then maybe if you are like so confident in yourself, then through the Spirit of the Holy Ghost, talking to Heavenly Father about it, going to the temple, having a lot of alone time with that, then maybe it could be a 30-day, 60-day. Not for me. I would be shocked. I would be like, this ain't Debbie. But I don't see me ever doing that, because I don't know how long it takes to get a background check.
Amen, sister.
Credit report. See, so however long that takes,
You can get that in about 24 hours, Debbie.
Okay, thanks. But you know
If
what I
you
mean?
pay
It's
enough
like for
money, you can get
me,
it faster than that, Debbie.
okay. Like I need to see your bank account, your last 5 years W-2s. I want to see your credit report. You know, so it takes a minute to be comfortable to ask those questions.
Mhm.
And so yeah, it would take me a lot longer than 30 days to know if that's what I'm going to do. But however, you know, all semi joking aside on that, you've got to be healed. You can't jump from one relationship to another, because you, like I said, you'll be blinded by the just the just the relationship. I used to be that way when I was a lot younger. It's like I knew somebody. I was married. I had a friend that was divorced, and she'd been divorced like 5 years. And I'm like, God, how do you stand it? You know, how do you stand being alone?
Mhm.
She's like, I'm okay with it now. And I never could fathom that because even after my divorce, um, I dated quite heavily. And for God, I just can't be alone. And then I finally got put in a situation to where, well, the situation is I came back into the church and I quit dating outside the church.
Right.
And
Okay.
so my perspective changed.
Right.
And when that happened, you know, I was like, you know, I'm good. I know what I want now.
Awesome. I really like how you brought up to not go from one relationship to another. I think that is very healthy. And I've always I learned early on that dating within the first year after a divorce or um, death of a spouse or whatever is one that you need to do kind of casually and not necessarily seriously, because the first year after is when you go through all the seasons of being without that person. And there's something about being away from somebody for a year that is very healing, and it also be very empowering. And I actually just learned that through therapy. Learned a lot through therapy. But so I just kind of made a personal rule for myself, or expectation, whatever you want to call it, that I would not date anyone seriously that had been divorced or widowed less than a year, because they needed that time. And also I noticed, even if I, say, went to dinner with them or whatever, and it was less than a year, they spent most of that time talking about their former spouse. They weren't quite ready to move on. And on a first date, do not bring up your ex-spouse or your former spouse or your late wife or your late husband or whatever. Just don't talk about that. You can talk about so many other things. Remember the Ford method? The F is family, O is occupation, R is recreation, D are dreams. Plenty of topics for conversation on a first date without having to bring up your former spouse. On the family topic, you can talk about kids or things you like to do with them or whatever, traditions you've got, but don't talk about your former spouse.
Well, one reason why people would do that, if you've been in a relationship length of time, 5 years, 30 years, whatever, your life is so interwoven with them that you're no longer your own person.
Mm-hmm.
And so once you're out of that relationship, just because the legal ties or the physical ties are gone, you're still interwoven with that person emotionally.
Right.
And you don't even know who you are anymore because you don't have your other half.
Right.
And so it's hard to separate yourself. Like me, I've been divorced long enough to where it's like I can tell you, I know I can tell you about my experiences and things I've done over the last 10 years that doesn't involve an ex-spouse.
Right.
Whereas if it's too close, you don't even have anything you can talk about. Like if it's not been at least a year, you don't even have any life experiences to have a conversation saying, oh yeah, well I did this or that. But well, you did it with the ex-spouse because it's not been that long ago.
I love that point. There's actually a dating guru that I listen to sometimes on YouTube, and he actually brings that very point up. He goes, make sure you have your own life, that you have your own stories, that you even go prepared with conversation starters or questions to ask or whatever to talk about your own story, some experience that you've had. You go prepared to talk about that on your first date or second date or whatever, so that you can do that. And we don't necessarily need to overshare. It's okay to not put it all on the table in the beginning. It's really okay because you're just getting to know each other on a surface level, and that's totally okay. All right, anyone else want to make any comments or share anything?
I actually had an 8 and a 9. Brian brought up the 8. I think we have to make sure that we are into the Holy Ghost to kind of guide us throughout the relationship. But one piece of advice that I think is really important is for us to have our the person that we're dating meet our like core people, whether that is family members or our best friends or whatever, because they know us as well as we know us, and they might help us see things that we otherwise wouldn't see. And so that was the point that I wanted to bring up. I know that that's important for me. Being divorced twice, I wasn't that willing to listen to my core people before, and now I trust them so much because they're the ones that have been with me through both of the divorces and have guided me through all of my dating since the second divorce.
I love that. I was actually just thinking about that even recently about how if I had trusted some of my core people, my life would have been a lot different, turned out a little bit different. So yeah, I totally amen to that one, sister.
Amen.
Yeah.
I do.
Hey.
Can you guys hear me? This is Jill.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. So I'm wondering, I have a very rich, full life, but when I get in my car to drive home, I raised a big family. I moved to a new state. I have a very rich, full life, but there is a real sadness that hits that I do not have a companion. And I'm wondering just quickly if each of you will just say, yes, I share that same sadness, because to me, it isn't that I need someone to live my life out in a happy way. I'm a happy person. I love my life, but I have a deep sadness that I do not have companionship, because my children are all raised, and I think that's normal to feel that. So I just quickly, I don't want to start a new discussion. I just want, does anybody else feel that? And do you think it's normal? Just quickly.
It's normal, in my opinion, because we're trained. That's the way we're trained. I mean, that's the way we're in the church, at least. That, you know, I think in and out of the church, people are just taught that you belong in couples.
I mean, even Heavenly Father tells us that men and women are supposed to be together. So I think if you don't feel that, something's wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes anyway, but it doesn't have to be all the time. I don't know if anybody can relate to this, but if you've ever gone on like a tour, like you ever gone on a vacation, like a cruise, and you've gone with a big group or like a field trip or something like that, and you have to go with this huge herd of people everywhere, and you can't go at your own pace, and you can't do everything that you want to do. Sometimes I enjoy not having that other person just for the freedom of being able to do what I want to do when I want to do it. And so I have to try to see the silver lining behind not having that person. And then there's other days where it's rainy and it's lonely and I don't have something that I want to do. I just want to be with somebody. So I think there's both sides of it, and we have to kind of enjoy the ability to have that freedom and the good side of being alone sometimes.
That's why you have to find the right person, though, because if it's somebody that's going to smother you, then you're not going to have the freedom that you have. If it's the right person and you want that freedom, they're going to give you that freedom, and you know they're at home. They're there to go home to. And I don't know, that's just maybe that's too high of an expectation, and that's why I'll be single till I die.
No, whoa.
Well, no, but you know, I mean, I'm BS, but anyway.
No,
I disagree with that. I think that you can negotiate anything.
Wait.
'Cause, 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 'cause
We've got somebody that's kind of garbled on here. You're having a hard time understanding.
Mhm.
I think Brian, but I'm
Okay, did we lose him? Okay.
stuck.
Let's, Jennifer, was it you that had a thought?
Yeah, I was just saying, I agree with Brian. I've been single long enough now that I've got to have my single time. And I think that we can negotiate that in relationships. I don't think that we have to be with our companion 24/7.
You said what I said, but in a different way.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. We couldn't hear you. You were garbled, I believe.
Yeah, we lost you for a minute, Brian.
Yeah, but I think
we lost your whole thing. Go ahead, Jennifer.
that's okay. I think that we have to negotiate that because we have been single. A lot of us have been single for a good long while. We have to realize that that's got to be a part of our new relationship because we have experienced that and at least ease into being around each other all the time.
And that's another reason we need to be confident with who we are, because so many times you hear about somebody, oh, well, she never saw her kids anymore after she got married because he just monopolized her time or whatever. That's why it's really important for us to be confident in who we are and what we want and not settle for something.
Oh, and settling again is another definition. And Jill, it is very normal. It is so normal. It is so normal. I can't even tell you how normal that is. Most of us are going to go home at the end of the day feeling like this is not what we signed up for. That we at this point in our lives, we're all supposed to be married and having that person that we know is going to be there at the end of the day. They're, good, bad, whatever. We're that security of knowing that we have that person that's going to love us. And that was what most of us had an expectation for. And we're all in a situation that we didn't, or most of us, I think, are in a situation we did not plan for. Or at least back in our 20s. And I love how, I can't remember who brought it up, but I love how, you said we got to do things different this time. We've got to go about the person that we choose a little different. Like I said earlier, we're not 20 anymore making a decision. We've got a lot of life experiences that we've had. And we've got a lot of, different things about us to integrate into another relationship. Okay, and we're getting some background noise from somebody. Roger, did you have a thought? Oh, we've got two Rogers here. There's a second Roger that is unmuted, but doesn't look like Roger. The Roger I know is muted. I don't know who the other one is. Anyway, Jill, did that help you? I hope.
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
No, thank you.
All right,
Thank
no
you.
problem. All righty. All right, let's go back to our topic of dating. I love how Jennifer brought up how we meet core people. We have them meet our core people because that's important. And I've learned through the years too to just be me, good, the bad, and all, because I have a hard time faking who I am at this point anyway. But I like who I am, and I'm hoping somebody else does too. But it's just a lot. It's just a different situation. All right. Any other comments? Let's have a conversation.
I have a question. You're talking about core people. Well, I consider my children and my in-law children my core people, but I don't know that I would expose somebody that I'm dating real quick. I guess that's more of a question. Would they be considered somebody you'd have to run them by, or how long do you wait before? I'm not even anywhere close to that, but just curious.
Well, for me, since I'm the one that made it, I guess I'll answer that question. My kids are my life. And if they don't get along with my kids and my kids don't get along with them, they can't be in my life. So at some point that's got to happen. And, sooner rather than later, because if I'm catching feelings for somebody, I don't want to ignore that.
Amen. Fred?
Can I say something?
Yes.
You're talking about core people. I have 6 children and lots of friends. And when you talk about your relationship with them, they're hesitant to say too much but I found that I was very good at ignoring them. They would say, well, there's a red flag there, Fred. Well, I don't know. Maybe not. But then later on, after a relationship ended, they all came forward to explain all the red flags they were trying to tell me about that I didn't listen. But so I think core people are good. I think I have particularly my older daughter is really good, and my older son. And so I agree with that. If they don't feel good about them, there's something there, I think. But of course, I remarried when I was 40 years old, and none of my children ever really cozied up to my wife. Now, I'm not sure what that was all about. And she was
Yeah.
really,
Right. And I think it's different at different stages. There are some kids when they're younger, I think it's better to not like, especially for a woman, and let's say a woman has primary custody of her kids like I did. It's really good not to have a lot of men in and out of those kids' lives, especially if they're really young. Okay. Um, but I do believe that you need to follow the intuition of those children at whatever age, because they're going to be honest. They're going to tell you like it is. With my last husband, with my third husband, my oldest at the time was 5 when we got married. When we got married. And I just asked him one day, I said, so what do you think about him? He goes, I don't really like him. I'm like, why don't you like him? Well, me and my ignorance, I didn't get that he couldn't tell me why at 5 years old, But he said, he didn't play football with me. And I'm like, okay, that's not a good reason, And I'm like, but for whatever reason, there was something about him he didn't like. And they never did get along all while we were married. And had I listened to him at 5, and I'm not saying everybody needs to, but I'm saying that's something that I realize now, that as a 5-year-old boy, he couldn't voice it, couldn't communicate it, but he could communicate enough to say, Mom, I don't think so with him. And I ignored it. He was 5. What does he know? Woo, and I listened. But yeah, so I do believe my adult children have had more involvement in the men that I date just because they're adults. And because of that experience that I had when he was 5, I now listen to those kids now. And I ask them, if it's somebody that I would consider dating long term, what they think. And I love that Jennifer brought up sooner than later. But I think, quite honestly, Kelly, you just have to follow your own intuition on that one, and your own promptings of the spirit.
I don't 100% agree with that.
Okay.
Like my sister, she married my brother's best friend, and I did not like him at all. I thought he was awful. He was okay. I didn't hate him at the time. I didn't dislike him. I didn't like him. I was in the middle, and I thought he would be awful for her, completely awful. Like he was gonna lead her down the wrong path. I was completely 100% wrong about him. He was the best thing for her. And if she would have listened to me at the time before she got married, and I would have told her, don't get married to him. He's just no good for you. She is a better person because of him today. So I think it goes both ways. So I wouldn't completely trust someone else's judgment. So I think it just depends. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying that they get the only vote. I'm just saying I want them to weigh in. I'm a big girl. I can make my
Nobody
own
gets
decisions.
veto power.
Right, exactly. Exactly. I just am saying I want them to weigh in
Right.
and tell me some of the things that they see and feel, so that my key people or my core people that know me better than I know myself a lot of times, because my kids we've been through a lot together, and we've we've pulled through it all, and we're all better people because of all of it. But they've been there for me, and I value their opinion. And my boys are not so much on me dating again, and I know they're going to be straight with me because they do want me happy at the end of the day. My daughter, like, whatever, Mom, I want you happy all the time, but the boys are a lot more critical.
You could almost add a number 10 and say, you meet all of their core people so that you know who you're going to be interacting with in the future too.
I 100% agree with you, Brian.
I remember when I went through my last divorce all those years ago, and my oldest son, I said, let him know that I wanted him to be a part of, I wanted him to meet the person, I wanted him to like him and whatever. And I remember him, it was like 15 or 16 at the time. He said, Mom, what does it matter? I'm not going to be around anyway. I'm not going to be living with you. I'm going to be going to college. I'm going to be doing whatever, right? Now he's married with his own family. But I told him, and I put this in a different perspective for him, and I said that the man that I married, your children will call Grandpa. Trust me, that's going to be an important relationship. So from there on out, he had a different perspective. It's different when you're 15 and 16, and the reasoning logic part, your brain's not developed yet. But he didn't think that far ahead to think, oh, wow, yeah, it will have an impact on me. He just thought, I'm not going to be living at home. It'll be all fine, Mom. So it is. I agree. I mean, Alyssa, I think you're right, and voicing opinion, but I do love that people don't get a veto power. You do weigh in those opinions.
One other thing I wanted to mention, because I have young kids there was some talk about when to introduce kids to the girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever.
Right.
I did have some experience with that, and I dated somebody who had a rule in their divorce that their agreement that they wouldn't introduce anybody until they had known that person for 3 months. And I think that's kind of more than just a little bit. I think that could even be a short amount of time for the amount of time you want to know somebody before you maybe even be exclusive with that person for 3 months before, because it is a pretty significant thing to introduce them to a young child, and the kid gets attached to them, and there has to be a lot of being careful about what they call that person too. But anyway, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, amen. I agree. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, can you hear me? I had to walk outside.
Yes.
I've been married twice. After my first marriage, my children were real young. They were like 1.5 and 4. And so I dated a lot, but I didn't let the kids see anybody I dated unless the guy was more than a casual date. They only saw the ones that had potential to have a long-term relationship, because I didn't want to confuse my children because they were so young.
Right. Yeah. I agree.
And like, so now, and then so the ones that did have potential, then I let them be around my kids. It was 2 girls, and it was funny because my youngest daughter, that was 1.5 up to 3, she didn't like the few guys that she had seen. And then there was one guy that she really liked. She got on his lap, she was playing with him, and I married him. I was like, if she likes him, I like him. And we were married for 11 years. And he wasn't a member. If he had been a member, we probably still would have been married.
Yeah. Okay.
But then, now my children are grown, and I think I would date somebody a few times before they met them, but they're adults,
Right.
they're big kids. They can handle. And so, and I would like maybe a little bit of their perspective.
Sure.
So I think everybody is individual.
Everybody's into what?
Especially on the age.
Yeah, definitely.
Based on the kid's age.
Yeah. And again, it's your own intuition, it's your own expectations, and your own perspective. You are the one that has stewardship over your children. So, so it's up to you as to when you feel like is the right time to bring them in. All right. Anyone else thank you, Debbie. Anyone else have comments or want to add to this conversation?
I would say one more thing, just on the whole kids meeting your prospective spouse. I have a friend who got married recently, and he's a widower and she was a widow. And he said, getting married is a lot more complicated now because we have to go meet each other's children before we get married. And that kind of struck me as funny, like you haven't already met the children and you've already decided to get married. So this is kind of putting, I think their relationship went pretty quick. So I guess, I don't know. But he was like Jill, though. He needed a companion. He missed having a wife, and so everybody's different.
Yeah. I think a lot of us miss that and different parts of our life. But yeah. Again, however they feel like it's necessary to do that, that works. So thank you for bringing that up, Kelly. Anyone else have any comments or thoughts they'd like to share? Yeah. So next week, what I want to actually do is talk more about just dating in general. Today, we spent a lot of time more talking about this article and the mindset and different things that we would add to that list. Next week, I want to continue this conversation and just talking about dating in general, expectations of dating, or what we're looking for, what would have us be in a position to want to date somebody, or that type of conversation. If you guys can be thinking of those, I just want to talk about dating. I want to talk about the different aspects of the single adult program and how we meet people and getting into dating and different things that you think are good, bad, whatever, and things that we feel like we need to do to be able to date, to meet people, to be able to have those relationships. Because I believe that all of us here would like to be married again one day. And, there are different aspects of doing this. And again, we're all at different stages. Before we head out, does anyone else have any other thoughts or comments they'd like to make?
I have a thought or a question.
Okay.
When is a person that's been newly divorced safe, if that's the right word, to date other people, new people? Let's say somebody, I know you talk about a year. Oh, a year. I know when I got divorced, I waited a week. But long story.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, because when you start dating right after you're divorced, it does certainly have a healing process, but it's often
Why close the door?
it's a short-term relationship because you're working through the process. Maybe it's 4 or 5 months, 6 months, and then okay, I need to move on because I'm past this point.
Okay.
But
So you're talking about seriously dating somebody, right? Like getting into a relationship?
We're just dating at all.
Well, now I did say that it was okay to date within the first year. I was just talking about not getting into like a serious relationship within the first year. But yeah, okay. So I'd like to
also something that goes along with that. If there's time for it, is I wouldn't try to go on a date with anyone in that first little while unless you are okay with that one being a failure. I made the mistake the first date I went on, and I had been separated for close to 3 years, but the first one that I went on was a terrible crash and burn. And that's probably the situation for a lot of people because you just don't go for the best one first, is what I'm saying.
I have a theory on that. The first one you date is your burner relationship because you make all your mistakes, and like you said, Brian, you don't want to mess that one up.
Love it.
Yeah, I used to think I used to wish I could have a trial kid, you know, that I could make all the mistakes on. Didn't matter. I mean, not really, but you know, wouldn't it be great if we had one that it didn't matter what we did, and then we could do it right with all the others? But
I think I've had a few I wanted to send back.
That's funny,
But now
Fred.
they're good. They're good.
Dates are kids.
Okay. Anyone else on answering that question on when would it be safe to date after a divorce?
Well, I had a friend right after my divorce say that his therapist, when he got divorced, his therapist told him, if you were an athlete and you had an injury, you would want to start training right away. And he said dating is kind of like training for your next relationship. So you kind of look at it as you had this relationship back to your good self. And then he signed me up for Match.com.
What are you looking for?
Work,
But like Brian says though, you don't want to burn one of the good ones.
Right.
You don't want
Right.
What are you looking for?
to.
It's totally fine.
What?
Okay. There's someone named Roger, blonde woman. I don't know what your real name is. That's trying to talk. Did you have a comment to make? I don't think so. Okay. So maybe.
So just approaching that from the other side, I got to know a lady who was recently widowed. This was a number of years back, and she was long distance. And you know, she says to me, we got to know each other quite well, never having met. But she says my husband gave me a last gift before he died. It was tickets to a Donny Osmond concert. And she asked me if I would be willing to go with her. I'm like, wow. It was interesting. She's a very pleasant lady. She was in no way, shape, or form ready to date. I mean, it was only 5 months since her husband had passed. And, I left that venue, and my phone rang every hour on the hour for the entire drive home. And it's like, I didn't know how to deal with the cling without hurting her feelings. And we did eventually talk about it. And she says, I am so sorry. I didn't realize that I wasn't there yet. And, but that was a matter of 2 years after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
So, would I do that again? You know what? Yeah, I'm not heartless. She was looking for a friend, and I could fill that role. And it was a long drive for me, but that was okay.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So that again though was more of a casual date. And it's, at least that's what it sounded like. And then
Yes.
with getting into a relationship though, I don't know if there's any right or wrong, Fred. I mean, does anybody else have any other thoughts or feelings on that one?
Would it be rude to upfront say, I'm really not ready for any kind of relationship, but I do want to spend time with you, do fun things, get to know each other without throwing the friend zone thing in there? I mean, I don't know. I'm new at all this, so you just tell me.
I think when you sign, sorry.
What was that, Jennifer?
I was just saying, I think when you allow yourself to go into a friend role, when ultimately we want a serious relationship, you are setting yourself up to get hurt. Because at some point that's going to change for one or the other. And that's exactly what they're talking about in the article about how we just do this whole casual thing nowadays. And it starts off by people having a different expectation. Eventually, you're going to catch feelings, especially if they're a decent human being, which most all of us are decent human beings. And so we're going to catch feelings, and somebody's going to get hurt because let's say you want to keep it in the friend zone and they catch feelings. Now they are going to be terribly hurt, or vice versa, and you're going to be terribly hurt. And we're trying to find somebody that we can be with long term. At least that's how I date.
I've been told by a woman that sometimes so into more than just the friend zone. So anytime you're dating anybody, there's a risk of one wanting to go further and the other one not. But is it bad to start off in the friend zone and then,
If both of you are agreeing to be in the friend zone, it's completely fine. But if one person wants more than friends, and let's just hypothetically, Fred, you wanted a relationship with me, and I'm like, we're just friends. How would you be able? You would always be disappointed if I always kept it there. That doesn't mean that I couldn't get there, if that makes sense. Like I would never want to hurt somebody intentionally.
There's some benefit to ambiguity and just not necessarily defining the relationship as the friend zone or not, because then you can allow that relationship to develop into what it needs to be. And so I say don't go and declare anything until you know for sure that you want to be this person's friend and be a true platonic friend, and that's all you ever want to be. And even without any possibility of romance, you still want to be that friend to them. Or if there's any question to it, I would say don't go into that friend zone, because somebody's going to get hurt. And there's I probably have more to say about that, but
yeah, I agree with Brian that I thought when we start declaring things, then that creates expectations. If you don't declare it, and then maybe something can happen or begin to develop, and we don't have to back up. Say, well, we're just friends, and then, well, wait a minute, maybe let's be more than friends. And I don't know, do those things happen naturally or what?
Yeah, I mean, I agree, because like with Brian and Fred, it's like I don't want to put a label on what's happening. I go into it as a friend. Whenever I've dated, it's like we're friends. In fact, it's so much for me to a degree. Well, I won't go into that, but anyway, I would date as friends. And then just because I don't want to have a level of expectation from them, because it's like if I'm a friend and they don't call me for a week, I'm cool with that. If I'm dating somebody thinking it's going to be a boyfriend, I better hear from them a lot during that week. You know what I'm saying? So the level of expectation is different between friends and a relationship. And I would never just jump into a relationship. So that's just me, though. But I mean, like, I think you've got to go into it as friends, because ultimately friends is what you want to be in the whole relationship, right? I mean, because a lot of pieces of a relationship decline over the years. Appearances will change, intimacy will change, but the thing that keeps it together is being with your best friend.
Okay.
So I would be afraid to put a label on going into something.
Anyone else want to respond to that?
The worst part of my divorce was that I lost my best friend, and I didn't realize that until not too long ago. And anyway, I'm gonna be best friends with my future husband. I mean, that's just how it is. And am I naive to think that we could say that we could level with each other and say, hey, you know what? I see that you might want more out of this than I do. So let's step back. I think I could be I'm friends with my ex-husband. I think I could be friends with somebody even if we weren't in the if we started in the friend zone, it moved farther than, you know what I'm saying? I don't think it would have to be all or nothing. Am I naive?
I just want to clarify. I was only saying that if one person wanted more and the other one wanted to be just a friend, I'm not saying define the relationship like early on or anything like that. I was being very specific about if one person likes you and you are a friend. I thought that's what we were talking about. I didn't realize that. Yeah, I definitely agree. You should not define the relationship until you're ready to define the relationship, and then, as Brian pointed out, be willing to deal with the consequences of defining that relationship. Because if you say you're friends, you almost kind of can't come back from that.
I agree with that, and that has been my experience. When you establish that you're just friends, I've never had an experience where you move past that one. So if you want to have a travel buddy, if you want to have somebody you do things with or whatever, then do that. And just don't put a definition on it. Just go to the movies with somebody. Just go, whatever with somebody if that's what you want to do. And then if that relationship develops over time, it will develop over time. There is someone that, and we'll start off with the assumption that we'll be friends, okay? And without having to actually define that. We would hope that we'd get along as friends if we're going to go out together and do fun things together, right? And then if the relationship develops further than that, that's awesome. If you're not feeling it, you can just let them know, that you're going to be moving on. But but with members of the opposite sex, if you're going to define a relationship as friends, then just expect it to stay as friends.
And the ambiguity, I think, they used to call that courting.
Right.
And that's kind of the fun part. It's kind of the fun part is wondering what if they're into you as much as you're into them. That's the whole fun part of dating them.
Totally.
And sparking. Don't forget sparking, Brian.
And you do want to set up your expectations early and not like lay it all on them. It's not like you're going to give them a contract to sign to date you, right? But you do want to let them know different things you like, you don't like, your expectations or whatever. There are different conversations that you can have. You don't want to jump from friends to talking about marriage within the first, little bit that you're going out, because that's not a healthy time to do that. Let it develop over time and don't expect it to rush. People that rush into a relationship, generally at our ages, not all of them, as somebody else pointed out, but a lot of them do end up, in a not great situation. But some of them are just awesome and work out beautifully. Like I think it was Debbie earlier said, I've seen it both ways too. But don't put somebody in the friend zone unless you know for sure that's where you want them to stay. But yeah, we all want somebody to go out and do something with and have fun with. I do things with girlfriends too. There's go to movie night, go to dinner, whatever. That's fun to do. You can go and do things with members of the opposite sex as well. So there are different ways of doing that and letting someone know that you're interested, or letting somebody know, how you're going to go about doing that. And we're going to get into that more next week when we talk more about dating. How you're going to let somebody know that you're interested, how you're going to communicate with that person, and how you go about. I know that we've talked about like the relationship attachment model, but we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like, in reality. And so I want to talk about things to do, things to talk about, not to talk about, just different aspects of actually dating somebody, and when to not let the relationship progress more, or what to do, and what to do when you do feel that fear, when you do feel that vulnerability of, oh no, I've already gone out with them 2 or 3 times and now what, right? You know, I don't know how many of us have experienced that. I know I've experienced that. And that is something that I would love to have a conversation with you guys about next week. Because those of us that have been through relationships that did not end well, it is really easy to add in that fear factor, if you will, or the other aspects of the ambiguity that we were talking about. Does that sound good? All right, we will do that. Well, I love you guys. I appreciate you sharing your Sunday evening with me, as always. You guys are so awesome. And I love that we're talking. I love that we're having an open conversation about this. It is kind of informal, laid back. There's a lot of people watching this during the week. Thank you guys for watching during the week. I just think that these are just conversations we're not really having at a dance or whatever. And so these are just things that we need to talk about so we can get to know each other. I've learned so much just in doing this the last few months. I hope you guys have too. I plan to continue to do this to the end of the year. Don't know if I'll continue it past this year, but it's what I felt like I needed to do for this year, so that's what I'm doing. And I hope that it's helpful for you. But you guys are awesome. I love you. I'm looking forward to seeing you again soon. And I'm signing out. Talk to you later.